Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Arent, and today I decided to make a video talking a bit about RMD, some of the basics in order to get yourself playing Rogue Mage Druid comp, talking a little bit about the different roles that a combat rogue or a subtlety rogue can play in an RMD, and talk basically about the basics of the comp. This video is geared more at lower level playing rogues that are wishing to become better at rogue and want to do arenas at a moderately high to maybe a very competitive level and want to advance better as a players. So this isn't really a video for anyone who is 2400 and push rating. This is more for rogues that are hovering between 1500 and 1800 that finally want to get to over the hurdle, maybe even reach 2k. So this video is going to cover the very basics of RMD, some of the thought processes that go into the strategies, some of the basic strategies, and as well some of the arena examples of RMD. I hope you guys enjoy this video. It's going to be a long one, so let's get right to it. So RMD translates to Rogue Mage Druid comp, and this comp is about scoring kills via strong cross CC. The Mage, the Rogue, and the Druid all play vital roles in this comp for it all to work. The first thing I want to cover is two different rogue specs that are very much viable with RMD. You have combat, and then you have subtlety, although granted, you can technically play assassination as RMD, it's just not as strong as the latter. The differences between combat and subtlety are slight, but I feel like it's partially regional differences, also the playstyle differences. But both of them are fairly effective, both can be played on US and EU ladders, so it's nice to have a pick and choose kind of scenario for rogues. Some of the advantages of Subtlety Rogue is that it offers great utility for cross CC and usually has an easier time lining up kills, but completely suffers outside of burst in terms of damage. Combat offers amazing damage that puts pressure on the kill target, especially the sustained damage, but doesn't have as much of an easier time flowing up into setups for kills. More basic in terms of setups, but really makes up for it in terms of sustained damage and burst damage. Now for the other team members. The Mage, who will most of the time be played in Frost spec, has so much CC with kicks, stuns, freezes, silences, and sheeps. One of the basic lineups a Mage has onto healers is to blink, deep, and then sheep the target in order to line up CC onto an enemy team. The Druid healer has a lot of mobility because hots are for the most part insta-cast type of abilities, so you can pre-hot your friendlies and then get yourself into a better position. Has strong cooldowns, great mobility, makes them hard to catch, immune to polymorphs if played correctly, as long as you're sending a form of sorts. They can offer cyclones which can be chained together to take out a target out of PvP combat completely. Now the big question is, which one of these comps is better for RMD? A lot of the players on US prefer to play Subtlety, while majority of the higher rated players on Europe prefer to play combat. So my best guess is it depends on your region and depends on your preferred playstyle. But let's take a look at the regions real quick to see what kind of comps it looks like US and EU ladders face, see if there's any big differences. When take a look at the EU brackets, you see that some of the possible comps that are playable in EU are LSD, RMD, TSG, Walking Dead, Shadowcleave, and Ebola Cleave. One of the trends for EU to take notice is their comps are either really tanky and or they usually train as singular targets. Such comps Walking Dead and TSG doing exactly the same job, so RMD combat might offer for a bit better in terms of damage. On NA, however, when you take a look at some of the classes at upper brackets, you can make out Turbo Cleave, God Comp, Frozen Chicken, RMD, Walking Dead, and Ebola Cleave. So comps that have a singular train target, but also comps that emphasize CC. Maybe that's why US ladders would prefer a Subtlety Rogue, because US ladders value CC over core raw damage. Now let's pull ourselves back away from rogues and talk about the comp as a whole. This comp focuses on 5 different things. First one being is cross CC. Cross CC is basically the use of crowd control in order to turn a fight from a 3v3 to 1v3 to gain favor. The next thing is strong burst damage, which is very hard to avoid. Every single setup you'll have strong burst damage, which will force enemies to trinket and use cooldowns. Which brings us to the next point, short cooldowns on burst. This way, by having short cooldowns, whenever you burst your targets and whenever you line up for a kill, it will wear them down, as the enemies will have to force trinkets, they have to be forced to use defensives, and eventually they'll run out of tricks in order to get out of your strong offensive pressure. 4. Potential to reset a whole fight. If you see enemies popping cooldowns trying to go offensive, all 3 specs are very mobile, so one of the potentials the specs can do is basically run away and reset the fight. While running away might seem like a cowardly strategy for a few, it is an actual arena strategy. Why would you fight an enemy or pop defensives when they have their cooldowns when you can simply run away and wait them out? and this is one of those things this comp excels at because all three specs are very mobile. The fifth thing this comp excels at is being fairly tanky. Rogues have Feint, which is 30% damage reduction, mages have ice blocks, druids have bark skin, iron bark, lots of cooldowns, as well as bear form that they can sit in order to reduce insane amounts of damage. When you think about it, RMD actually has a huge toolkit to work with when it comes to playing in arenas, and that's what makes it a very powerful comp to play. Now for the general strategies depending on the spec. First we have Subtlety, which is played mostly on US servers. Subtlety can burst and line up CC and line up a kill every 30 seconds with cross CC to set up a kill. We'll probably have to go through cooldowns until finally scoring a target. So about every 30 seconds, get your mage to blink deep, sheep the target, off kidney at second DPS, and go cheap shot with Shadow Dance or with Vanish onto the primary target. Do this a couple times and you'll definitely wear out the other team until you finally score the kill. Combat, on the other hand, has a lot of sustain but doesn't have as many lineups. Technically with Combat Rogue you can line up once every hour, and outside of that you just have strong sustain damage which you can take advantage of anytime. As long as a rogue is running Glyph of Disappearance, which you should be technically every single minute, you can Vanish, cheap shot the DPS, and then kidney the primary DPS to set up a kill. The mage blinks, deep freezes the healer, and then cheap polymorphs it 3 times in a row, while the druid cyclones the other DPS that you stunned. You will need a bit more communication with your druid in order to get him to bash and then triple clone the healer whenever you don't have Vanish for the cheap shot. Outside of that, combat deals damage at all times, so there's a lot of opportunities throughout the arena to score a kill, even though you might not have cross CC. Just a simple stun into a smoke bomb might sometimes just do the trick. You just gotta be on the lookout for it. Some of the possible kill targets to go on into arenas are Death Knights, Enhancement Shamans, Hunters, Pharaohs, Resto Shamans, Resto Druid, Warlocks, and Mages. Of course, you should change up your strategy depending on the situation, but those are some of the kill targets that you can select whenever you queue into arenas. Last things, as just my personal thoughts, do not invest damage into a target that has defensives up. If the Warlock for whatever reason has wall up, go start hitting the Resto Druid. Touch any target that doesn't have defensives up, and swap from target to target. This comp is capable of forcing cooldowns and swaps, so do it as often as possible. And the most important thing, have fun. Just enjoy yourself, enjoy the time playing with friends or teammates, build strategies, build friendships, build communication, and have a blast. Now let's look at some of the games. The first game is against an LSD with the rest of the Shaman. I'm going to stab the Shaman to make sure he does not get Earthshield on him, since he will be the kill target. I'm going to open up on a Warlock with a cheap shot into a Slice and Dice. Afterwards, it's Shadow Reflection marked for the kidney onto the Shaman, as we're going to try to kill him in an opener. For combat rogues, Restoration Shamans are basically fish food, especially at lower MMR. So what I'm going to do is basically burst into him with a Adrenaline Rush and pre-clock myself in order to avoid any kind of magical CC from the other team. I am going to get bashed, which I'll trinket immediately to stay offensive. Vanish, Eviscerate, Cheap Shot, and then Garrote at the end of my Subterfuge in between the kidney stuns, and that's basically going to finish out the game for us. While this clip doesn't exactly show the cross CC, the setup, the lineup, it does show the potential for this comp to be really powerful, especially in an opener. Because of relatively short cooldowns, you can basically burst every time you go onto your targets, and learn to burst in an opener. Having a strong opener usually means that the game will be tilted into your favor from the get-go. The next game will show you guys a little bit more about cross CC and how advantageous it is to go a 3v1 game. At the very beginning, we do have a Shaman, which I am going to open up with a sap, but right before the sap lands, he was able to land an Earthshield on himself. Still, he is probably the best target for us to open on. I'm going to cheap shot the Warrior, and then I'm going to go ham onto the Shaman. One of the things for you guys to note is we did not cross CC in an opener, and this is something you guys can learn from our game, is make sure to cross CC the target. What could have been done differently is if maybe my mage were to deep freeze the Warlock and then into a full polymorph, it might have forced a trinket, and it definitely would have put a lot more pressure onto the enemy team because the Warlock wouldn't be able to start his dots and wouldn't be able to throw out any CC. Now, a lot of things are going to happen in this next clip. The Shaman goes around the corner, which are blind, which he trinkets. The Warrior freaks out at low health and bobs down with the sword, so we won't have to deal with that later. The Warlock also was thrown in a CC, which he trinketed, so now we have a healer and a DPS who can be thrown to CC at any moment. Shortly after lining up our blind CC onto the healer, we're going to land a polymorph onto the healer with a blink polymorph onto the Shaman, and since there is no DR on polymorphs and the healer just used up a trinket, it's going to be a full sheep. You saw me preemptively run over to the healer in hopes that the warrior might trinket and try to safeguard over to the healer, but he didn't. He trinketed a little late and died into the stun. I do want to apologize that these games are quick, but for the most part RMP or RMD based games are going to be fast paced, so gotta kinda keep up with the pace. Because we're facing against an RMP with a subtlety rogue, we want to make sure to stop the opener, bust down in both of the DPS, and then we're going to start lining up damage and some kind of pressure onto the healer. Here's something else you guys can take away from this game. Make sure to communicate the strategy or get in voice comms before your mage polymorphs a kill target for whatever reason. Some of the things to note: our opener on the mage forced a pain suppression from the disc priest onto the mage because he was thinking we were going to sit on the mage. After the mage stops sitting CC, before he can get a cast off, I throw a blind onto him, which a trinket, so the mage now is available for further CC. And now I'm just going to try to line up a kill or some kind of a setup onto the priest. The other team is looking for a lineup, and that's basically what I'm trying to do as well. So I decide I'm going to use Shadow Affliction Kidney onto the healer in order to start lining up some CC chain. As my stuns are going to be short due to DR, I'm going to Vanish Corrode the healer so he doesn't get a cast in between stuns. While vanished, I am going to also Corrode the mage, which opens the mage up into a polymorph and into a cyclone afterwards. While doing that, I get a full damage deep insight onto the priest, and I'm just going to be wailing on him while trying to look for a kill. The enemy team is in offensive mode trying to peel for me, but my mage is still able to cast a few hits onto the priest, and I finish it off with a single hit of a killing spree at deep insight, which is every time it's hilarious when I don't get to use a full killing spree. And these were only some of the games that I was able to play on RMD, but those were the best ones that I wanted to showcase to you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the games, and hopefully they were helpful in one way or another. Again, everything was done at a fairly low MMR. But this game is really done for anybody who's playing at a low MMR, thinking about climbing, thinking about playing rogue, and maybe is thinking about getting competitive and trying a real meta comp. So hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. My name is Darren. Hopefully you guys have yourselves a good one, and I hope I'll see you guys in another video.